So it seems that Dimitri and Titus is back as the captain of the Ultramarine 2nd Company, and he's going to be fighting against the Necrons to cleanse the realm of Ultramar. Beyond that, we've got multiple new 40k characters, some leaks confirmed and some new Cataphractii Terminators. Let's take a look at what happened in Games Workshop's reveal show. Hello and welcome back to Warspecs Tactics, where today we're doing a roundup of all the new model reveals in Games Workshop's latest reveal show, including a good chunk of 40k characters, and our first look at the End Edition campaign, which is indeed called the 500 Worlds. All of this has come out from Games Workshop's World Champions of Warhammer reveal show. This one's focused around their big competitive event and their grand narrative event, which is happening over this weekend in Atlanta. It was widely expected to show us the End Edition campaign for 40k, and it did seem likely we'd get new Space Marines of some sort or another, with Ultramarine heraldry being teased and knowing that there was something called the 500 Worlds coming. Games Workshop's had a few different formats for how they've delivered this stream so far, and it seems for their latest attempts they decided to both do the live reveal show and the online reveal show at the same time, where for a few of the recent ones they'd either kept them separate or done a live one in person and then a pre-recorded one that felt a little bit less interactive really. This latest attempt wasn't exactly great though, the main problem being the audio being just utterly awful. A lot of the time just too quiet and not picking up what you want it to. They did deliberately take a break to try and fix it, and after a pause for about 20 minutes or so it came back and was absolutely no better. Hopefully they'll get that sorted out for next time. You could still make out what they were saying, but did detract from it a fair bit. I think they wanted us to be able to hear a little of what the crowd was reacting to the reveals, and the microphones certainly weren't picking that up, it was mainly just silence. For their reveals though, they had 7 different game systems to show stuff off for. I think for that reason I wasn't really expecting it to be absolutely enormous for Warhammer 40k, as it was just going to be one part of a whole. It seems that for this one we mainly got character miniatures, 4 new character models, one for Votann, Tau, Necrons and Tyranids, a new sculpt of Dimitri and Titus with his command squad, the identity of the 500 World campaign announced and how that's going to unfold, and also these were the more official reveals of the things that had leaked out. The Nightbringer model was built for this campaign event, and we got the official unveiling of the Necron Battle Force box sets that leaked the other week. For the other systems though, there was a lot of stuff. Horus Heresy had new Cataphractii Terminators and some Breacher squads, plus Skitarii, a Marshal and the Stratos for the MkIII. It seems there's no Custodes this time, but looks like they could be pretty odds on for the next one perhaps. I think that's now revealed the vast majority of things that they showed off at the initial teaser. For Legions Imperialis, they converted a bunch of Saturnine box things to Legion scale. Age of Sigmar had a Maggotkin of Nurgle, Warhammer Quest Darkwater was revealed in full with a lot of Nurgle miniatures, the Old World got some Grand Cathay things, Necromunda got Palatine Justicars and a character and some Ironhead squats, and then there were some animation teasers for Warhammer Plus as well, a few of them Warhammer 40k relevant. Let's start with 40k though and focus on Titus and the 500 Worlds first. It does feel like this End Edition campaign has perhaps made some pretty rapid decisions after Space Marine 2 came out. It looks like after the massive popularity of the game, they've put Titus front and centre in the End Edition campaign and had a rather snazzy new animation trailer to go along with that, showing him as captain before a company of Ultramarines and talking about his new mission. It's a fairly big amount of lore progression there. He's been promoted to captain once again compared with being a lieutenant previously, and he is now captain of the 2nd Company of Ultramarines, taking the title of the Master of the Watch. And now tasked by Guilliman, it's now his duty to retake the original 500 Worlds of Ultramar, many of which have been lost or fallen into other hands over the millennia. The trailer stating that the Primarch asks the impossible, but only in death does duty end. As the captain of the 2nd Company, that means he's taken over from Captain Akaran, with his prominent appearance giving you the missions in Space Marine 2. The article that went alongside the release basically stated that there's only one way that captains usually are taken off duty, so heavily implied that he's either dead or maybe in a dreadnought or something. Something bad has happened to Mr. Akaran, unfortunately. They said that they'd be following up in lore articles later in the week. Along with the big lore reveals though, it seems that Titus does have a new model, this one representing him as a Space Marine captain now, rather than the lieutenant model that came out alongside Space Marine 2. Again, another update of an Ultramarines character that has a recent release. Might not necessarily be music to the ears of the Chaos and Xenos players out there. This one feels like more of an interesting update versus the Calgar one in my opinion though. It's come with lore progression, and the original Titus miniature wasn't exactly universally liked. It still seems that he's fighting with Chainsword and Bolter this time. He's found himself a fancy coat, and it's also got a much nicer head sculpt too. Interestingly though, he's not just coming out as a solo character, he'll be part of a sort of command squad box set, and his sort of command squad is named the Wardens of Ultramar. It looks like it's Captain Titus, 2 famous faces from Secret Level and Space Marine 2, and then a bunch of high-ranking mortals, each with their own specialist tasks and commands. For the Space Marines, we've got veteran Sergeant Matorus, He's the one who originally discovered Titus and took him on as an aspirant to eventually become a Space Marine. And we saw him and Titus in action together in the secret level animation, with a squad of Blade Guards fighting against the Tzeentch cultists and then the Sorcerer. Titus rescuing Matorus at the end. He's basically a Blade Guard sergeant in this one, armed with a sword rather than an axe. Then interestingly, we've got one of the two companions Titus has in Space Marine 2, Gadriel apparently serving as an ancient now, bearing Titus's banner. So I guess that would be the banner of the second company now. Looks like he's armed with a bolter as well as that. It perhaps does feel a bit weird to have these two present, but not Chiron. Otherwise, for the mortals in Titus's command squad, they all seem like important people within the realm of Ultramar. We've got a fleet master called Gaius Silver, a legate of the Ultramar Defense Auxiliary, so basically their version of the Imperial Guard, Lucia Vestha, a diplomat, and Daniel Cornelius, an astropath. It does feel a bit on the unusual side to have regular humans actually supporting and taking to the battlefield alongside the Ultramarines. Definitely a bit unusual for a Space Marine unit release here. Overall, certainly feels like they're going to be a slightly weird unit in game. I guess the overall feel of them might be kind of similar to the company heroes, a very set command squad that Titus might be able to join, though I'd guess they might have separate datasheets. I suspect that you might be able to either field Titus either with these guys or attached to another unit. Will be interesting to see what sort of command abilities they have, and what the fighting abilities of Gadriel and Matorus are like, and how much the mortals actually add to the squad in terms of lore. I can't help but think that if the squad gets attached, they're probably going to get used as cannon fodder. In any case, Titus should also get a new datasheet along with this one. Hopefully they learn from the past one a little bit, and it'll be quite nice to see his chainsword a bit more of a threat this time around. It certainly feels like Ultramarines aren't going to be hurting for options anytime soon though. As well as appearing in a new miniature, Titus is also on the front cover of what looks like the first instalment of a campaign series. Games Workshop described 500 Worlds Titus as the next major narrative expansion to Warhammer 40k, and although they didn't really say it too explicitly anywhere, it looks like this one might be the first instalment out of several. The overall box for this set of books is labelled 500 Worlds Titus, the battle for unity begins. That kind of implies that if this one's the beginning book, then more is going to go down after this. Between rumours and model teasers, sounds like we're going to be getting some chaos at some point. Maybe we'll have 500 Worlds Huron. In any case, for this first one, it's a set of 4 books in a slipcase. Titus is the name of the lore book and the name of the set overall, and the primary conflict in this one will be a battle between the Ultramarines versus a destroyer cult of the Necrons, led by a new named character and Nightbringer. There's always the potential for some interesting things to happen in current setting narrative for 40k, so that one's going to be pretty interesting in its own right. And then beyond that, for the other books, there's one called Dread Incursions, which is boarding actions for the 500 Worlds campaign apparently. One called The War for the Vespeta Front, which is a narrative campaign system apparently. I'd guess that'd be Crusade related, though it doesn't look like they necessarily said it here. And then finally we do actually have some match play rules in this one called Titus Detachments. This one's going to be 6 new detachments for Warhammer 40k that are fully mainstream game legal. There's going to be 3 for the Space Marines and 3 for the Necrons. I guess at least some of the Space Marine ones might be Ultramarine locked, and thankfully they have clarified that you won't have to buy this box set to get your hands on them. They will be freely downloadable online, which is definitely a good thing. It'll be interesting to see what this one has in store. A bunch of new detachments for the Necrons in particular seems interesting. I'm sure plenty of Space Marine players will be interested in those ones, though it does feel like we've had an absolute ton of Space Marine detachments over 10th edition so far. For the Necrons, the leader in this campaign is going to be Nekrosor Ammentar. He's a new character to Warhammer 40k and is a named destroyer lord. The backstory they've given him is that he's one of the first destroyers and believed to be the origin of the destroyer curse in the first place. They've said the Silent King apparently has just repressed all knowledge of him, and he leads a vast Necron destroyer cult in their quest to exterminate all life. And apparently his particular deranged plan to help with that is to put all the Catan shards of the Nightbringer back together and restore the Star God in full, which given just how devastatingly powerful the Nightbringer would be, he'd probably help with the destroy all life thing pretty significantly. He feels like a bit of an old Tron style character, where there were more soulless robots going for the Red Harvest. The model himself I think is a pretty cool one. It basically looks like he is an alpha level Ophidian destroyer. He's got the same sort of long snaking whip coil tail style thing, though I think he's a fair bit bigger. He's got 2 enormous claws, both of them with different sort of styles, and then some auxiliary blades as well, some snaking ones on some great big tendrils, and then some sort of power hyperphase blades. He seems pretty likely to be very dangerous in combat indeed. I strongly suspect just with the appearance of the model he's going to have really quite a lot of attacks to throw at the enemy. The rest of the miniature feels kind of fun. His asymmetry and the sort of glowing orbs at the back of him sort of make him look a bit diseased. In game seems pretty likely that he'd be able to join the Ophidian destroyers given his appearance, though they certainly could do other things like make him a lone operative. There's maybe just a bit of disappointment for the Necrons. There's no updates for the Locust Destroyers or the Locust Lord at this point, which does perhaps feel a shame, as this seems like quite a good narrative point to redo them if they are going to focus on destroyers like this. I guess it's not completely impossible they could crop up sometime later in this campaign though. Otherwise, for the Necron reveals, they had the Catan Shard of the Nightbringer, which they leaked early and then posted up articles at the time. Maybe a bit of a shame that this one stole their thunder for the preview show here. It's a pretty awesome, great big centerpiece miniature for the Necrons that they've been waiting for some time. And I feel like if we hadn't already seen him, he would have been the star of this show. Having him officially in a more mainstream teaser though, I suppose shows that he's not too very far away from releasing. Then finally for the Necron wave, the Destroyer box set maybe takes on a bit more meaning in this context if they are going to have an entire campaign focused around them. In the 500 Worlds Battalion Necrons, we have a Hex-marked Destroyer, 3 Ophidian Destroyers and 3 Scorpex, plus 2 Locust Heavy Destroyers. If they priced it the same as the Combat Patrols, it'd be around about 33% off the miniatures within it, so potentially either could be a pretty good deal here compared to buying them separately, or it could just be that they're going to charge more for this box. It doesn't really add up to a huge amount of points in game, but the units I think are all quite fun ones that Necron players generally want in their collections. At the moment, literally all of them are pretty effective in game at the moment as well, which doesn't hurt either. Between all that, I suspect that this one will be a popular one. Before we move on, I'll just give a quick shout out to today's video sponsor in Titan's Terrain. They have one option to get a board worth of Warhammer 40k terrain on the battlefield. They do things a little bit different to most out there with their folding cardboard terrain set. The idea behind their stuff is that you basically have a 3x4 grid of cardboard tiles, and they get arranged to make a 45x60 inch Warhammer battlefield, the right size for current Warhammer 40k. And then each of those tiles unfolds and up pops a building, so you basically have an entire pop-up battlefield that you can store completely flat. It means that the main unique selling point for their stuff is that you basically have a battlefield that's just unusually easy to transport around. You can fit all the tiles in a box set the same sort of size as a standard board game, and there aren't really many terrain sets that can fold down to this small this easily, so quite good if you're taking it round to a friend's house or have limited space to store terrain at home. They've got a few different designs for them, feel free to check them out, link down in the video description. I'll cycle back to them at the end of the video briefly to talk through a few of their pros and cons and specific offerings. In any case, thanks to them for sponsoring this one. It seems that Space Marines and Necrons are taking the limelight for the 40k End Edition campaign so far. Though alongside those, we also had the preview of 3 more new characters as well. One for the Tyranids, Leagues of Votann, and a twin set of battlesuits for the Tau. For the Leagues of Votann, we have Behekh Stonebrow. He is basically a Chthonian Berserk character, and as you can tell, it looks like this guy's an Orc Hunter guy. Proudly displaying his trophy of an unlucky greenskin there. It seems like this one's a theme they're going down with the Leagues of Votann after the Tyranid hunting Buri Egnason. Apparently he is nicknamed the Warbreaker, and his clone variation gives him some unusually tough skin with which to ward off attacks. It looks like he's wielding some sort of enormous dark star weapon, a great big hammer/scythe type thing. His hands are both bionic ones, apparently being burnt away by that weapon when he was fighting an Orc freebooter captain, and is stood on a rather chunky tactical rock to give him a little bit more height and stand out amongst his fellows. It looks like the Chthonian Berserks are finally going to get a leader model for the Leagues of Votann, and I'll guess they'll have a squad of them hitting with a lot of damage indeed. Next up for the Tau, we've got a rather unusual special character offering called the Twin Lance, new battlesuits for the greater good. These are basically a pair of named characters that fight as a team, and they seem to be clad in a new variant of Crisis suit called the Warmaker battlesuit. It looks like it's pretty chunky and up-armoured, and they have a particularly big standout shield generator on one arm. At least from appearances, it does look like they're going to be harder to take out than the standard Tau. The characters' names are Sunseer and Scatterflare. It seems like they're basically named for their weapons, as one has a fancy fusion gun called a Fusion Eliminator, the other one having an ion cannon called the Ion Scatter Cannon. They also look like they have pistols drawn as well, held in the arm that has the shield. I feel like they look fairly nice, fairly fun dynamic looking models with some chunky armour. It seems they've got a fair bit of fire raging across their bases as they charge in, and also accompanied by a pair of gun drones. Apparently these two have been held up as heroes of the Tau Empire, and are supposed to be basically the core Empire's exemplars of Montcar now. The Ethereals wanting someone to be able to show off that tactical philosophy. Now Farsight went renegade. Apparently they can move extremely fast and hit hard at close range, which I guess would indicate their rules. I'd be kind of surprised if they can join a Crisis Battlesuit unit, though I suppose it's not impossible. It perhaps seems more likely they might be operating as a pair independently. Hopefully they're useful and interesting in-game. I guess just one weapon system is going to have to do quite a lot of work for both of these. Compared with some Tau battlesuits, they perhaps just feel a little bit on the low-armed sort of side, particularly when you can have battlesuit commanders taken to the field with 4 different weapon systems. Then finally for the 40k character offerings, we've got a new Tyranid miniature, a Tyranid Prime with Lash Whip. I did feel like one of the models that was more obviously missing from the Tyranid range in general. We've got the Wings Prime from the Leviathan box set that did just seem a bit unusual, having a wings thing leading the on-the-ground warriors. Hopefully at some point they give the Winged Prime some shrikes to fly around with. As with the Winged Prime, I'd guess there'd be a more sort of infantry brawler style character, more so than taking out tanks and heavies quite so easily. The Winged one can give their units sustained hits. Maybe there's some chance that he'll do the same with a different special rule on top of that. The model seems fairly fun and dynamic, and nice to have him as a fairly standard character that feels like he should have been in the Tyranid range. Moving beyond mainstream 40k, and we had the reveals for the Horus Heresy, including some shiny new Terminators that we knew were coming. Games Workshop had teased the new Cataphractii Terminators in their Horus Heresy reveals, and it seems they're going to be coming out in box sets of 6, slightly upscaled, more in the sort of line of new Terminators, and they're going to have 2 different options for war gear, either a Combi Bolter and Power Fist style one, or a Volkite and Power Mace. They've also got the options for the Heavy Flamer and the Reaper Autocannon. I feel like people have different preferences on the Terminator plate. I feel like the Cataphractii's up-armoured ones do feel pretty cool to me. And you certainly could adapt these to Warhammer 40k if you wanted to, though perhaps maybe a little bit easier for the Bolter and Fist version as opposed to the Mace and Volkite. Having 6 of them in a box is maybe a little bit of an awkward number though. The majority of 40k Terminators tend to be fielded in 3s. Perhaps having one bonus Terminator body as a spare isn't the worst though. Maybe you could kit bash a character or have a different war gear option or something. Otherwise for the Horus Heresy, they also have the Mark III Breacher Squad as well. Quite a fun Heresy unit with the shields with the gun mounts for them. I'm sure people wouldn't be too adverse to seeing some sort of equivalent for these for Warhammer 40k. I'm sure the Imperial Fist might well enjoy some Primaris ones. In any case, these guys are all coming in the Siege Assault battle group. It's got 12 of the Cataphractii Terminators in them, and it looks like one set of each of the squads, 10 of the Breachers, and a Leviathan Dreadnought. Those Battle Force box sets often have a fairly good discount compared with buying them separately. Then otherwise for the Horus Heresy, it looks like there was another wave for the Mechanicum, and for this one it looks like we've got some Skitarii equivalents for the Mechanicum of 30k, the precursors to the Rangers and Vanguard that we have in the 41st Millennium. These ones are all rather disturbing and creepy, elongated limbed pilgrim warriors of Mars. They're certainly a bit disturbing looking with their kind of backward jointed legs they've got going on. And it appears that they come in multiples of 8. Looks like there's 16 in the big box they come out with initially. Then for other new Mechanicum models, there's the conversion of the Stratos Automata into plastic, and also a Skitarii Marshal in a tattered cape. Again, looks like they've got a launch battle force coming out for them as well. 16 of the Skitarii troops, plus the Marshal and the Stratos. I guess from the appearance of this one though, it's probably going to be significantly less than the Space Marine one. As mentioned, seems that there was no Adeptus Custodes this time around. Now I've seen the Cataphractii Terminator that was teased previously though, a pretty reasonable chance they won't be too far away. Moving on through the other reveals, there were some Warhammer animations teased, most of them fairly cool looking action snippets of various 40k factions in action, things that are going to be coming to Warhammer Plus sometime in the new year. One of the particularly standout looking ones was the Sisters of Battle versus Orcs. It felt like most of the shots of those looked pretty excellent. There's also going to be a focus on the Eldar as well with some Same Han, some Aeronautica Imperialis. There was also a shot of a Space Marine Terminator that they said might be a clue to Astartes 2. That's certainly going to be big news when that one drops. Otherwise, going through their other reveals, they fully unveiled Warhammer Quest Darkwater. It's their co-op box game of heroes versus Nurgle. We've seen a good chunk of the heroes already, though they revealed the rest of them here, with a Jade Wizard, an Archer, and a sort of Beastman style thing. The box seems to come with a pretty enormous amount of various Nurgle things though. They've got some lesser beasties called Maya Kelpies, and the treasure tokens I think are particularly fun. Little Nurgle beast objectives with some sort of relic weapon in. They've got a bunch of Nurgle corrupted Pestigors, and they're led into battle by a Falhooth Shaman. The leaders of the bad guys in the box is this Gelgus Post model. He looks like an all very twisted champion of Nurgle, and here's a few of his lackeys called Pox Wretches. They basically seem like the equivalent of Pox Walkers, but for Age of Sigmar. There's a few more characters as well, including the Cankerborn and a couple of other heroes, a great big guy with a massive arm and a big axe, plus a Maggot Witch style thing. And they also have some Nurgle Knights called Blight Templars. Overall quite a bit of fun stuff for Nurgle. Feels like at least some of them might be able to be pressed into either Death Guard or Nurgle Demon armies for 40k if you wanted to be a bit creative. Nurgle's blessings didn't stop there though. We also had Maggotkin of Nurgle for Age of Sigmar. They had some Plagueblade Knights and some resculpted Putrid Blight Kings that came out from around about the end of the Old World and the start of Age of Sigmar. plus some Nurgle cavalry riding some twisted steeds, and a commander guy riding something far worse. They also look like they have a spearhead box as well, this one having 6 Nurglings and a Beast of Nurgle, which I guess might conceivably have some value for Warhammer 40k collectors of demons. The other models are MkIII humans though, which might not fit in quite as well unless you wanted to proxy them for plague bearers or something. Then for the old world, they had another wave of new plastic kits for Grand Cathay, which they launched as a faction in the not too distant past. They've got some new wizards, heavy firepower with their crane gun teams, and a peasant levy, which I thought looks rather fun. I quite like their fancy hats and spears there. For Legions Imperialis, it seemed that they've done the Saturnine box sets, but at super small scale. There's Saturnine Terminators, those Arachne quad accelerator platforms, and some little Saturnine dreadnoughts and command sections as well. Again, it looks like they're coming out in a battle group box set before going individually. As well as that, they also got some Fellblade and Falchion equivalents, including what they said was a new pattern of them, a flame Fellblade called the Ascalon. It's the one on the bottom right out of these 4 here, and it basically packs a Titan scale heavy flamer. You also have a couple of fairly big Battle Force box sets as well, combining a bunch of things from the Space Marines and the Solar Auxilia. For Necromunda, they had some more squat Ironhead Prospectors, a new fancy special character called Ozostium Aranthus, the Divine Prince, and some rather odd and disturbing looking Palanite Justicars, some rather unusual looking Imperial Police Enforcers there. Looks like one's got a Judge or Lawyer's wig and a servo skull with the same. That's about it for this one though. Let me know your thoughts as to the 40k reveals. Perhaps not an enormous amount of new miniatures in this one. We didn't get any full on range reveals this time around, though quite a lot of interesting special characters and intriguing to find out about the start of the End Edition campaign. Let me know your thoughts on new Titus and the various Xenos characters out there. I look forward to hearing your takes down in the comments below. That's about it for this one though. Before I go, I'll just cycle back to Titans Terrain, the video sponsor. As mentioned, one option for getting a 40k terrain set on the battlefield, with their slightly different take on things with their folding cardboard set. Compared with most terrain sets out there, I would say there's a few more obvious pros and cons to this one. The biggest advantages are that it's really quite easy to store and transport due to being able to fold completely flat. It is cheaper than a whole board worth of Games Workshop terrain, at least somewhat comparable to cheaper MDF ones. It also has the advantage of not needing any painting or assembly. It is ready to go immediately without any hobby work if hobby time is in short supply and you need to save that for your armies. The fold flat thing does come with some trade-offs though. It is a bit less sturdy and hard wearing versus plastic or MDF. It doesn't really bear weight quite so well, so you might not be able to put models in the top floors of ruins. And the grid layout can lead to a bit less flexibility than more standard terrain. You can still get some variety by rotating the tiles and things, though it might not be the worst idea in the world to say have an extra ruin wall or two to break up a couple of firing lanes. It won't exactly make tournament approved layouts, but it feels like anecdotally it does well enough for a casual table of 40k terrain. For the sets they have on offer for this, they have a sort of Chaos Foundry style one, this one with plenty of glowing runes and burnt out factories. And then they have a more standard Ruin City style one with some grey ruin buildings and armoured containers, that one called the Shattered Hive. Each of those also has an expansion centrepiece set as well, a big cathedral style thing for the city, and a spire for the foundry one. Those ones are basically made out of 2 tiles pushed together to make one big building. In any case, thanks to them for sponsoring this one. You can find them links down in the video description below. In any case though, that's about it for this one. Feel free to subscribe to Auspex Tactics if you'd like to see more like this. I'll certainly keep the regular 40k videos coming out, with new ones just about every day. If you have been enjoying all the videos on the channel, Auspex Tactics does have a Patreon page as well, and you can find that linked in the video description if you'd like to help support and keep these coming. Channel patrons do get a few advantages, seeing certain videos early, regular votes to see what sort of things happen next on the channel, and automatic entry into the regular prize giveaways with a chance to win some big model kits each month. If any of that sounds good to you, or you'd just like to help support, the link's down in the video description. In any case, a massive thank you for listening, and I'll hope to see you guys next time.